What is going on? She's just deleted her Twitter. She's getting called out because it was exposed, because an interview got brought up. I'm not joking when I say this. Something's gone weirdly wrong. Like, we literally hired a freaking Chronically Online GM.
What you just witnessed isn't panic. It's a power play. And Caitlin Clark didn't say a single word to trigger it. Welcome back to the Digital Detective Desk. I'm Jax Riley, and what I'm about to show you will completely reframe how you understand power in professional sports. While other channels are chasing conspiracy theories about deleted Twitter accounts, I've been connecting the dots that reveal Caitlin Clark's actual influence over the Indiana Fever organization. Here's what the other channels won't tell you. Clark's strategic silence during Kelly Krauskopf's meltdown wasn't passive. It was calculated. And today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how her refusal to respond became the most powerful statement in WNBA history. If you're tired of surface-level sports drama and want the real intelligence behind the headlines, hit that subscribe button. Because what we're uncovering today goes way deeper than one executive's social media panic. Here's your roadmap to the truth. First, we're examining the timeline that competitors missed. Then, the organizational psychology behind strategic silence. Next, the documented evidence of Clark's actual leverage. And finally, why this pattern predicts the future of player power in professional sports. Let's start with what really happened in that interview, because the temperature of the online conversation suggests something much deeper than a simple misstatement. October 2024. Kelly Krauskopf sits down for what should be routine franchise-building interview. She's discussing the future of Indiana Fever basketball, and then she drops this line that would come back to haunt her 9 months later.
That we want to sustain the growth and the interest level in the franchise. I mean, this is about the Indiana Fever. Yes, we have a foundational player in Caitlin Clark and Leah Boston, and we're going to continue to add to that. But I want this team to be the leader in the country, and a brand, an enduring brand, like Apple or something. I mean, we have a real opportunity.
Now, here's what every other channel is missing. This wasn't just a tone-deaf comment. This was a fundamental misunderstanding of organizational power dynamics in the modern WNBA. Krauskopf was trying to position Clark as a component in a larger machine, but the digital breadcrumbs tell a different story. Official sources won't tell you this, but if you follow the digital breadcrumbs, a different picture emerges. Clark wasn't just a foundational player. She was the foundation. The entire franchise. Value proposition. The reason season ticket holders renewed. The driving force behind merchandise sales that delayed jersey shipments to on or before July 8th due to unprecedented demand. But here's where the story gets fascinating. When this comment resurfaced in July 2025, triggering massive fan backlash, Clark did something that corporate executives fear more than any angry statement. She said nothing. Absolutely nothing. Let me break down something that competitors completely missed. In organizational psychology, silence isn't absence of power. It's often the ultimate expression of it. And Clark's calculated non-response during the Krauskopf crisis reveals sophisticated understanding of leverage dynamics. Think about it. Sophie Cunningham launches a podcast empire, calling Clark critics dumb as fikes. Quark. Stephanie White gets fined for defending Clark against referee bias. Fans organize boycott threats with hashtags trending nationally. And through all of this chaos, Clark maintains perfect silence.
I was a ref. I know I would mess up all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that your job is easy, but when it is a simple call right in front of your face multiple times, what are you doing? Yeah.
Just go tomorrow. You're on the Las Vegas Strip. What can the Las Vegas expect from Sophie?
Oh, you know what? I'm just gonna be me. I don't go in there trying to predetermine anything. I'm dialed in. I need to focus on hitting my shots, making sure I'm executing the schemes right. I'm not focused on the extracurricular activities. And you know what? During that, it was just part of the game. I think the refs had a lot to do with that. It was a build-up for a couple of years now of them just not protecting, the star player of the WNBA. And so at the end of the day, I'm going to protect my teammates. That's what I do. And I'm a team player, so it's all good.
But here's what the noise reveals. When your teammates, coaches, and fans are willing to absorb fines, ejections, and league discipline to defend you, and you don't have to ask them to do it, that's not weakness. That's institutional power at its highest level. The temperature of the online conversation suggests Clark understood something that Krauskopf didn't. In modern professional sports, especially in social media age, the person who controls the narrative isn't the one talking the most. It's the one everyone else is talking about. And this brings us to the inevitable question. If Clark's silence was strategic, what was the strategy? Like this video, if you think Clark's silence was calculated. Drop a comment with your theory on her next move. And if you're not subscribed yet, you're missing the deeper analysis that mainstream sports media won't touch. I've been filtering through the noise, and the signals point to something unprecedented in WNBA history. Clark's silence during organizational crisis wasn't just powerful. It was documentation of actual control. Here's the evidence chain that competitors aren't connecting. When Krauskopf made the Apple comment, she revealed fundamental misunderstanding of Clark's position. But when the comment resurfaced and triggered backlash, the organizational response pattern exposed who really controls Indiana Fever decision-making. First, Krauskopf deletes her entire social media presence. No statement, no clarification, no apology, just panic deletion. Meanwhile, Clark maintains normal posting schedule. Business as usual, message sent and received.
I've said before, and I will say it again, Stephanie White, Amber Cox, Kelly Crosscroft, the Indiana Fever president, they were not ready. Now, Christine Brennan in her book confirmed the WNBA and the Indiana Fever did not realize what they were about to get themselves into with drafting Caitlin Clark because the popularity they weren't prepared for and didn't see coming. Yes, Stephanie White, every single solitary move that you make is going to be scrutinized. Welcome to it. Right here.
Now let's get into rumor territory. Nothing is officially confirmed, but the online chatter is too loud to ignore. Multiple sources suggest that Krauskopf's social media disappearance wasn't just embarrassment. It was strategic retreat after internal pressure. And that pressure, according to digital breadcrumbs I've been following, came from Clark's representation. Here's what they missed: the timing of Sophie Cunningham's podcast launch, her revelation about Phoenix Mercury targeting discussions, and her systematic monetization of WNBA fines into million-dollar brand deals. This wasn't coincidence. This was coordinated messaging around Clark's untouchable status. But the story doesn't end there. Because what competitors are treating as drama, I'm reading as business intelligence, and the financial implications of Clark's strategic silence reveal why Krauskopf's position became untenable. Let me paint the financial picture that other channels won't analyze. Clark's presence generates sold-out arenas. Her merchandise drives revenue streams that delayed jersey production due to demand. Her games become national television events. And her rookie season transformed Indiana Fever from WNBA footnote to must-watch franchise. So when the team president publicly compares Clark to a component in Apple's product ecosystem, rather than acknowledging her as the entire value proposition, the message to sponsors, season ticket holders, and league partners is clear. Management doesn't understand their own business model. Okay, now let's get into rumor territory. Nothing is officially confirmed, but if you follow the digital breadcrumbs, a different picture emerges. Sources close to the organization suggest that Clark's silence during the crisis wasn't just strategic patience, it was demonstration of organizational leverage.
Wasn't a dirty play. It was an intentional foul, and it was meant to send a message. It turned into a scuffle, and I don't think anybody wanted that. But the way that the game went and how egregious the referees were and how they were not protecting players, and they especially weren't protecting the #1 player in this league, the biggest draw in this league, which is Caitlin Clark, and they continue to not do that. To me, this was not a dirty play. This was making a statement because the referees didn't do their damn job. This would not have happened at the end of the game if the referees did their job during the first play. If the referees did their job, I'm sorry, not just the first play, every single play leading up to that. If the referees had control of the game, that is their only job. The referees' first job, their #1 job, is to protect their.
Think about the power dynamics here. While Krauskopf scrambles to contain social media backlash through account deletion, Clark continues normal operations. No panic, no damage control, no need for statements, because when you control the actual value proposition, you don't need to defend your position. Others defend it for you. Hit that subscribe button if you want more deep dive analysis that goes beyond sports headlines into actual business intelligence. Reading the signals from the digital ecosystem, Clark's silence created something that corporate communications experts spend millions trying to achieve. A network effect where multiple stakeholders amplify your position without direct coordination. Sophie Cunningham builds podcast empire defending Clark. Stephanie White absorbs league fines challenging referee bias. ESPN broadcasters Ryan Ruocco and Rebecca Lobo highlight missed calls on national television. Season ticket holders organize boycott threats targeting organizational revenue. And through all of this, Clark says nothing and controls everything. This isn't accident. This is sophisticated understanding of influence networks in professional sports. And here's what the other channels won't tell you. The pattern reveals Clark learned something from watching previous WNBA stars navigate organizational politics. Official sources won't tell you this, but the temperature of the online conversation suggests Clark studied how individual leverage works in team sports environments. She watched players exhaust themselves fighting public battles with management, media, and league officials, and she chose a different path. But here's where it gets deeper. Clark's silence during the Krauskopf crisis wasn't just organizational power play. It was strategic positioning around documented evidence of systematic targeting that competitors are afraid to analyze comprehensively.
Second, take a look here.
What the WNBA is doing with Caitlin Clark is the equivalent of the NBA doing this to Michael Jordan in 1986. It just doesn't make sense to me. You are biting the hand that feeds you. Mind you, without Caitlin Clark,
Let me connect dots that other channels won't touch. Clark averaging 4.5 personal fouls per game in 2024, highest among rookies. ESPN broadcasters highlighting multiple missed calls in single games. Sophie Cunningham revealing Phoenix Mercury locker room discussions about showing her what the "you" really is. Coach confrontations with referees requiring assistant coach intervention. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented pattern recognition. And Clark's silence throughout systematic targeting demonstrates something that organizational psychologists recognize. When you're confident in your long-term position, you don't waste energy fighting short-term provocations. The signals point to Clark understanding something that previous WNBA stars missed. Fighting every battle publicly dilutes your actual power. But maintaining strategic silence while others document the evidence, that builds systematic case for institutional change. Now, let's get into speculation territory, but the digital breadcrumbs are too consistent to ignore. Clark's silence strategy isn't just organizational leverage. It's monetization positioning for post-playing career influence that competitors aren't recognizing. Look at Sophie Cunningham's transformation. From role player to 1.6 million TikTok followers overnight. From $900 in WNBA fines to million-dollar brand partnerships with Ring, Arby's, and Adidas. From team bench warmer to podcast deal with Colin Cowherd's The Volume Network. And this transformation happened through defending Clark, not through personal controversy or individual viral moments, through systematic positioning as Clark's organizational ally. I've been reading the temperature of the influence economy, and the signals suggest Clark is building something unprecedented. A post-playing career platform based on documented institutional influence rather than individual performance statistics. Drop a comment with your prediction for Clark's next strategic move. And if you think this analysis goes deeper than anything else you've seen, smash that like button. But here's what really separates this analysis from competitor content. Clark's strategic silence during organizational crisis isn't just about current power dynamics. It's institutional positioning for long-term influence over WNBA development that extends way beyond her playing career. Reading the signals from the broader ecosystem, Clark's silence strategy creates something that previous generations of athletes couldn't achieve. Institutional credibility that survives individual performance fluctuations. Think about the pattern. While other WNBA stars build personal brands through social media engagement, podcast appearances, and public controversy, Clark builds institutional influence through documented organizational impact and strategic non-engagement. The temperature of the online conversation suggests this approach recognizes fundamental shift in professional sports influence. Individual star power is temporary. Institutional leverage is permanent. And Clark's silence during the Krauskopf crisis demonstrates understanding of this distinction that competitors miss completely. Let me point out something that other channels are completely missing. Clark's strategic silence created space for secondary players to build independent media empires that now influence WNBA narrative more than traditional league communications. Sophie Cunningham's Show Me Something podcast with West Wilson, Aaliyah Boston's collaboration with Candace Parker, multiple Indiana Fever players developing independent media platforms. This isn't coincidence. This is systematic ecosystem development around Clark's gravitational influence. The digital breadcrumbs reveal something fascinating. Clark's silence strategy enables teammates to monetize controversy defense while maintaining her own institutional positioning above the fray. It's organizational development through strategic non-participation. Official sources won't tell you this, but if you follow the influence mapping, Clark's approach creates sustainable revenue streams for multiple stakeholders while consolidating actual decision-making authority. That's not just individual leverage, that's ecosystem control. Here's what separates this analysis from everything else you'll watch. Other channels compare Clark's situation to individual player controversies or WNBA drama cycles. But the real reference point is institutional power development in professional sports history. Clark's strategic silence during organizational crisis mirrors approaches used by athletes who transitioned into long-term institutional influence. The pattern recognition suggests understanding of how individual performance translates into systemic control that extends beyond playing career. The temperature of the conversation around Clark's organizational leverage reveals something unprecedented in WNBA history. A player who built institutional influence through strategic non-engagement rather than public relationship management. And this brings us to the inevitable question that competitors won't ask. If Clark's silence strategy is this sophisticated, what does she know about WNBA's future that others don't? I've been connecting dots across multiple data points, and what emerges is systematic evidence of institutional influence that goes way beyond individual star power. Clark's silence during the Krauskopf crisis wasn't reaction. It was documentation. Here's the evidence chain. DeWanna Bonner seeking team exit after $200K investment, citing organizational dysfunction. Brianna Turner signing controversy involving anti-Clark social media history. Stephanie White coaching philosophy conflicts with Clark's play style, documented across multiple games. These aren't isolated incidents. They're systematic indicators of organizational restructuring around single players' institutional requirements. And Clark's silence throughout this restructuring demonstrates confidence in outcomes that others are still fighting to achieve. The signals point to something that organizational development experts recognize. When institutional change happens around your requirements without your direct participation, that's not influence, that's control. Let me break down the business analysis that competitors won't touch. Clark's strategic silence during organizational crisis wasn't just power play. It was financial positioning for revenue optimization that extends across multiple stakeholder categories. The monetary implications of Clark's institutional influence include sold-out arena attendance, merchandise revenue that delayed production timelines, national television rating increases, and sponsor interest that transformed Indiana Fever from budget franchise to premium investment opportunity. But here's what other channels miss. Clark's silence strategy during controversy protects these revenue streams by avoiding polarizing public statements while allowing organic narrative development through secondary voices. The financial intelligence reveals sophisticated understanding of brand management in professional sports. Individual controversy generates short-term engagement, but risks long-term institutional relationships. Strategic silence maintains both immediate revenue protection and future influence expansion. Subscribe if you want more financial analysis that goes beyond sports entertainment into actual business intelligence that affects multi-million-dollar organizational decisions. So what's fact and what's speculation? Let's break it down with the systematic analysis that separates this content from everything else you'll watch about this topic. Fact: Kelly Krauskopf made Apple comparison comment that triggered massive fan backlash and social media deletion panic. Fact: Clark maintained strategic silence throughout organizational crisis, while others absorbed fines and league discipline defending her position. Fact: Multiple organizational changes occurred around Clark's institutional requirements without her direct public participation. Speculation: Clark's silence strategy represents sophisticated institutional influence development. Speculation: Organizational restructuring indicates systematic control rather than individual star power. Speculation: Pattern suggests post-playing career institutional influence positioning. But here's what the evidence clearly supports. Clark's approach to organizational leverage demonstrates understanding of power dynamics that previous WNBA players didn't achieve. And her strategic silence during crisis reveals confidence in institutional position that doesn't require public defense. The pattern recognition from Clark's strategic silence approach enables prediction framework for future WNBA organizational development that competitors aren't analyzing. Based on documented evidence of Clark's institutional influence, combined with systematic organizational changes occurring around her requirements, the trajectory suggests continued consolidation of decision-making authority without traditional public relationship management. The temperature of the ecosystem indicates this approach influences other players' strategic development. Sophie Cunningham's monetization success. Aaliyah Boston's media platform development. Multiple secondary players building independent revenue streams through association. With Clark's institutional leverage, this isn't just individual success story. It's systematic transformation of player power dynamics in professional sports that extends way beyond WNBA organizational structure. The digital detective work around Clark's strategic silence reveals institutional influence development that goes deeper than any individual controversy or organizational crisis. And the documentation suggests this pattern continues evolving in directions that traditional sports analysis doesn't recognize. I've been following these digital breadcrumbs for months, and what emerges is systematic evidence of power dynamics, transformation that affects every aspect of WNBA organizational development. Clark's silence isn't weakness. It's documentation of strength that doesn't require public validation. But the investigation doesn't end here. Because if Clark's institutional influence is this sophisticated, and her strategic silence this effective, what other organizational changes are happening that mainstream sports media isn't documenting? That's your homework assignment. Start connecting dots. Follow the digital breadcrumbs. Read the signals that others miss. And remember, in the age of information abundance, power belongs to those who understand what silence reveals about institutional control. What do you think Clark's next strategic move will be? Drop your prediction in the comments. If this analysis opened your eyes to institutional power dynamics you hadn't considered, smash that like button. And if you want investigation that goes beyond sports entertainment into actual organizational intelligence, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell. Because the story of Clark's strategic silence is just the beginning. The real investigation starts with what this pattern reveals about the future of professional sports' institutional influence. And trust me, what we uncover next is going to change how you understand power in competitive athletics forever. The temperature is rising, the signals are multiplying, and the digital breadcrumbs are leading somewhere that's going to blow this whole conversation wide open. Stay curious, stay connected, and remember, the most powerful statements are sometimes the ones never spoken.